Imagine facing an army where every warrior runs straight toward you without fear. They carry no heavy shields, no long throwing spears, and no horses. Yet within minutes, your army is surrounded. There is nowhere to run. Your commanders are dead. Your soldiers panic. The battle is over before you even understand what happened. This wasn't magic. It was the military genius of one man. His name was Shaka Zulu, and the tactics he created transformed a small clan into one of the most feared military powers in African history. Today, we're uncovering the military secrets that allowed him to defeat rival kingdoms, reshape southern Africa, and leave behind a legacy that military historians still study. But one of his greatest weapons wasn't a spear. It was an idea. And once you discover it, you'll understand why entire nations feared hearing the name Zulu. When people hear the name Shaka Zulu, they often picture a fearless warrior charging into battle. But that's only part of the story. His real power wasn't just his strength. It was the way he completely changed the rules of war. He redesigned weapons. He reinvented military training. He demanded discipline unlike anything his enemies had ever seen. Every battle became a carefully planned trap. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how his army defeated forces that often outnumbered them, why his enemies struggled to stop him, and which military secret became his most devastating invention. Some of these strategies would influence warfare for generations. The world before Shaka. To understand why Shaka changed history, we first need to understand the world he was born into. Around the late 18th century, southern Africa was home to many independent communities. These groups traded with one another, formed alliances, competed for land, and sometimes fought over cattle, water, and territory. Most battles followed familiar patterns. Warriors usually carried long throwing spears designed to attack from a distance. After exchanging several volleys, many clashes ended quickly as one side withdrew. Victory often depended more on driving an enemy away than completely destroying them. It was a style of warfare that had existed for generations. No one imagined that it was about to change forever. Then a young warrior began asking a dangerous question. What if every army is fighting the wrong way? That question would reshape an entire region. Shaka's early struggles. Shaka was not born into power. His early life was filled with hardship and uncertainty. Because of the circumstances surrounding his birth, he and his mother lived through periods of exile and instability. Instead of growing up as a celebrated prince, Shaka experienced rejection, hardship, and constant challenges. But difficult lives often create determined people. As he grew older, he joined the army of a powerful regional leader. There, he proved himself through discipline, endurance, and remarkable courage. While other warriors focused only on winning battles, Shaka observed everything. He studied formations. He watched commanders make mistakes. He noticed how fear spread through an army. Most importantly, he realized that the traditional way of fighting wasted opportunities. Every battle became a lesson. Every victory became an experiment. Every defeat revealed another weakness to exploit. Without realizing it, Shaka was preparing for a military revolution. The first secret. When Shaka finally gained the authority to lead, he didn't simply command an army. He rebuilt it from the ground up. He introduced one change that seemed almost impossible. Many warriors hated it. Some thought it would never work. Yet that single decision became the foundation of one of history's most feared fighting forces. The military revolution that changed everything. When Shaka became leader of the Zulu, he knew that bravery alone would never build a powerful kingdom. His enemies were just as courageous. If he wanted to dominate the battlefield, he had to make his warriors fight differently from everyone else. So he did something no one expected. He abandoned the traditional style of war and created an entirely new military system. Many older warriors resisted the changes. They believed the old methods had worked for generations. Why change them now? But Shaka wasn't interested in tradition. He was interested in victory. And victory required innovation. What happened next would completely change warfare across southern Africa. Secret number 1. The short spear. The first change shocked everyone. Instead of relying mainly on long throwing spears, Shaka introduced a shorter stabbing spear known as the ikwa. Unlike a throwing spear, this weapon was designed for close combat. It forced warriors to move directly toward the enemy instead of attacking from a safe distance. That sounded terrifying. It also made them incredibly dangerous. Once Zulu warriors closed the gap, their opponents often had little time to react. The battle became fast, violent, and overwhelming. The weapon earned its famous name from the sound it made when pulled from an enemy's shield or body. That chilling sound became one of the last things many opponents ever heard. But a new weapon alone wasn't enough. Shaka knew that weapons were only as effective as the people using them. So he transformed the warriors themselves. Secret number 2, training without mercy. Most armies trained for battle. Shaka trained his warriors to survive anything. Every day demanded incredible discipline. Long marches tested their endurance. Intense drills built speed and coordination. Warriors learned to move as one united force instead of fighting as individuals. Tradition also tells us that many warriors trained barefoot, allowing them to move quickly across rough ground while building resilience. Shaka expected absolute obedience. Every command had to be followed immediately. Every formation had to remain intact. There was no room for hesitation. His army wasn't just a collection of fighters. It was a machine. Every warrior knew exactly where to stand, exactly when to attack, and exactly how to support the man beside him. That discipline became one of the greatest advantages on the battlefield. But Shaka had an even bigger surprise waiting for his enemies. Secret number 3, the buffalo horns formation. Imagine looking across the battlefield. The enemy charges straight toward you. Everything seems normal. Then suddenly, 2 large groups begin moving around both sides of your army. At first, you barely notice. A few minutes later, it's too late. You've been surrounded. This was Shaka's famous battle formation, often called the buffalo horns. The strongest warriors attacked from the front. Fast-moving units swept around both sides. Experienced reserves waited behind, ready to reinforce any weak point or chase fleeing enemies. Instead of pushing an army backward, Shaka trapped it. Once the circle closed, escape became almost impossible. His enemies weren't simply defeated. They were overwhelmed from every direction. Cliffhanger. But even these revolutionary tactics weren't Shaka's greatest advantage. His most powerful weapon wasn't made of iron. It was the fear he planted in the minds of every enemy long before the battle even began. The deadliest weapon was fear. Before a single spear was raised, before the first warrior charged, Shaka had already begun fighting the battle. His greatest weapon wasn't the ikwa. It wasn't the buffalo horns formation. It was psychological warfare. As stories of Zulu victories spread across southern Africa, rival chiefs heard the same terrifying reports. The Zulu never stop advancing. They don't break formation. They don't run. They surround entire armies. Whether every story was true or not no longer mattered. Fear was spreading faster than the Zulu army itself. Some communities surrendered before a battle even began. Others abandoned their villages, believing resistance was hopeless. Shaka understood something many great commanders throughout history would also discover. An enemy who loses confidence is already halfway to defeat. And while fear weakened his enemies, discipline made the Zulu almost impossible to break. An army that moved like one man. Most armies of the time fought as groups of brave individuals. The Zulu fought as a single body. Every regiment had a purpose. Every warrior knew exactly where to stand. No one charged early. No one broke ranks. No one fought only for personal glory. When the signal came, thousands moved together. The sound of synchronized footsteps echoed across the ground. Shields locked together. Spears pointed forward. The front line advanced with calm determination, while the flanking regiments quietly swept toward the enemy's sides. Imagine seeing that from across the battlefield. No shouting. No panic. Just an army moving with absolute confidence. For many opponents, the battle was already lost before the first clash. Because they weren't facing scattered warriors. They were facing a perfectly organized fighting force. When speed became a weapon, Shaka believed that speed could defeat numbers. His regiments trained to march long distances quickly, often arriving before enemies expected them. A rival chief might believe he had several days to prepare. Instead, Zulu warriors appeared on the horizon at sunrise. The surprise alone created confusion. Commanders rushed to organize defenses. Messages failed to reach nearby allies. Warriors scrambled into position. By the time the enemy finally formed a battle line, the buffalo horns were already closing in. This combination of speed, planning, and surprise turned ordinary battles into overwhelming victories. It wasn't luck. It was preparation. Every march, every drill, every formation, every order, all of it had been practiced long before the battle began. The price of building an empire. But every great military revolution comes with a cost. As the Zulu Kingdom expanded, neighboring communities faced enormous pressure. Some chose to join Shaka. Others resisted. Conflicts across the region contributed to a period of major political and social upheaval. Families were displaced. Kingdoms rose and fell. Entire regions were transformed. To some, Shaka was a brilliant nation builder. To others, he was a relentless conqueror. His legacy remains the subject of historical debate to this day. Yet one fact is beyond dispute. He permanently changed the history of Southern Africa. Cliffhanger. But after years of unstoppable victories, something happened that no enemy army had ever managed to achieve. The greatest threat to Shaka Zulu did not come from outside his kingdom. It came from within. And that betrayal would change African history forever. The betrayal that ended a legend. After years of expanding the Zulu Kingdom, Shaka stood at the height of his power. His armies had transformed the balance of power across much of southern Africa. His name inspired loyalty among his followers and fear among many of his rivals. From the outside, it seemed as though nothing could stop him. But history often teaches the same lesson. The greatest danger to a powerful ruler is not always an enemy beyond the borders. Sometimes, it is the people closest to the throne. As Shaka's rule continued, tensions grew within his inner circle. Power struggles, personal rivalries, and uncertainty over the future of the kingdom created deep divisions. Then, in 1828, everything changed. Shaka Zulu was assassinated by members of his own family. The warrior who had survived countless battles was not defeated on the battlefield. His life ended through betrayal. The king who had built one of Africa's most disciplined military forces could not defend himself from those he trusted. Did his empire die with him? Many believed the Zulu Kingdom would collapse after Shaka's death. Instead, his military system survived. The regiments he organized continued to fight. The discipline he demanded remained. The tactics he introduced shaped the Zulu army for years to come. His successors inherited more than a kingdom. They inherited a revolutionary way of making war. Years later, the Zulu military would once again astonish the world. Even powerful European armies discovered that defeating the Zulu would be far more difficult than they expected. The ideas Shaka introduced did not disappear with him. His influence continued long after his death. The military secrets that made history. So what were the secrets that allowed Shaka Zulu to change history? It wasn't just one weapon. It wasn't just one battle. It was a complete military revolution. He replaced long-range fighting with aggressive close combat. He introduced the Ikwa, turning every warrior into a deadly close-quarters fighter. He trained soldiers with relentless discipline until they moved as one. He developed the famous buffalo horns formation, surrounding enemies instead of simply driving them away. He valued speed, planning, endurance, and surprise over brute force. And perhaps most importantly, he understood that fear could defeat an enemy before the battle even began. These ideas transformed a relatively small kingdom into one of the most respected military powers in African history. That is why historians still study Shaka today. Not simply because he won battles, but because he changed the way battles were fought. Conclusion. More than 200 years have passed since Shaka Zulu walked the battlefields of southern Africa. Yet his name still commands attention. To some, he was a visionary military genius. To others, he was a ruthless conqueror. History continues to debate his legacy. But one truth remains impossible to ignore. Very few leaders have transformed warfare as completely as Shaka Zulu. His greatest victory was not a single battle. It was proving that discipline, strategy, and innovation could change the course of history. If you enjoyed uncovering the military secrets of one of Africa's greatest warrior kings, subscribe for more untold stories from history. Because the next legend we explore may be even more incredible than this one.